Find a kind of level of processing type of effect where if they're just asked some sort of very basic level of retrieval, whether they're asked to do kind of a really serious, more inquiry-based sort of retrieval, whether that makes a difference or whether you've examined that? The types of questions that are asked?
So, well, in this data set that I just described, no. So we basically looking at just learning a foreign vocabulary, the English equivalents to new Japanese words, and so as I described in the test, they were just given the Japanese word and asked to retrieve the English equivalent. But as Roddy gave you a little preview, in my master's thesis at Washington University, I looked at different types of retrieval tests. I compared, for example, multiple choice versus short answer type quizzing, because these are sort of the most commonly used types of formats in the classroom. And what I found was that if you give students feedback on these initial quizzes, right, so you basically told them, the correct answer after they took the quiz, it is the short answer type of quiz format that actually produces the most robust benefits on the final test.
Is that only with feedback?
Yes, with feedback, yes. So as you might imagine, if you give a short answer quiz without the feedback on a short answer quiz, there are more failures in retrieval, right, compared to a multiple choice test where you can sort of pick out one of the options and guess, right? So without the feedback, if they cannot retrieve the answer on the initial quiz, then that information is not going to magically be recovered, right? Unlikely, so yeah.
Sean, I had a couple of questions about your findings. One of which is I was a little bit puzzled by the fact that in many cases faster acquisition leads to less retention, but in this case you're getting faster acquisition and more retention. And I was wondering about that. And the second question is, what do you think the mechanism of the expansion effect might be?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's certainly a very interesting question, and we were glad we added that final test on day 84 because we wanted to rule out this common trend in other studies which show that often conditions that promote quick acquisition often lead to more rapid forgetting. So we were glad that we had that final test on day 84 to at least rule out that possibility. As to why that did not occur, I think with review sessions that occur across separate days, we are no longer running into the problem of having that first review opportunity occur too soon after study. So if you think back to the earlier studies that looked at expanding retrieval practice within a single session, the way expanding retrieval is operationalized is that first retrieval attempt occurs very soon after studying. Right? So you see the item, you learn Alison Shaw's name, and then you have to retrieve her name very shortly after that. And so some of the research done by Roddy and Jeff Karpicki has found that when you have that retrieval opportunity occur too soon after study, you actually lose the benefit of that retrieval attempt because it's trivial now. You just learn Alison Shaw's name. To have to retrieve her name right after she's told you her name, it's kind of trivial, right? So whereas in the experiment that I described to you, those review opportunities occurred on separate days. So there was at least, was it 2 or 3 day gap before that first retrieval review session, even in the expanding condition. So in all cases, I would argue retrieval was effortful and it was not trivial, even in the expanding condition. And so I think that allows the learner to really gain from each review session.
Yeah. So I wondered, have you thought about replicating your study with a task that's a little more complex or meaningful? And if not, why do you think you can generalize your results in that way? And if yes, what do you anticipate the results will be? And that goes kind of back to the mechanism question earlier.
Yeah, that's a terrific question. I think the results that I described today would generalize to any types of materials that involve sort of fact acquisition type materials, right? Which I would argue are is still important, right? In terms of learning any subject, there is often a sort of a base of knowledge that any student could benefit, knowing well, and have a great facility, have that type of information at their fingertips, and that allows them to then do sort of more complex, higher order types of problem solving, inferential reasoning, and so on. But having said that, I do acknowledge that it's also important to follow up this type of research with more complex types of tasks, and certainly that's on the cards. And hopefully with the funding agencies in this room, they will be amenable to these types of grant applications in the near future. Rodney, do you have anything to add about more complex types of? Oh.
Yeah, we can have one or two more questions, but we need a microphone. Oh, okay. Well, okay. No, there's two microphones, but Gary and then Dedry.
Okay, we'll do a couple of quick questions. You've been talking about short answer quizzes as the, I guess, ideal retrieval process, but what about, I'm imagining all my experience with secondary math teachers, and I'm thinking, is there some other thing like just repeating problem sets over time? Would that give you the same effect as the quiz?
We've done work in math classes at Columbia Middle School. We've done work in math classes at Columbia Middle School, and it's very interesting. It's one of two subjects where we have not gotten reliable effects of our manipulations. And the reason we think is that in math classes, it's the one place where they quiz you and give problem sets, you do homework, you do problems in class. And so if we add a couple more little problems, it's a pathetic manipulation given the amount they're already doing. And so we haven't used these long periods like Sean did. I mean, this is an heroic experiment. There's never been anything like it in the memory research where you have to bring these people back. Well, I assume they're Amazon church. But it's really hard to do that kind of research and get those long delayed retentions and do expanding retrieval. But at least in our hands, we didn't have these expanding retrieval type. It was our usual quizzing. But 8th grade, was it 8th grade math, Pooja? What math? 6th grade math, we were not getting effects. And our assumption was they were just getting so much quizzing and so many problem sets already that our manipulation was just too small, whereas in the other subjects they weren't getting that.
The reason I mentioned that is because some time ago when I was a high school principal, many moons ago, I inherited a math department that uses Saxon math. And I tried to argue with them forever about how that probably in the long term isn't the best for doing other things than simple algorithms. And then if you looked at it very carefully, that there wasn't a concept that always reinforced. So a problem that was given 1 week, 2 weeks later it would be a homework problem. 4 weeks later it would be another one. And the results were good on the finals. Now, I don't know whatever happened to those kids when it came to upper level math, but so when all of this talk about retrieving process, that's really what some of these secular math programs use.
Okay, and then we'll be great.
Okay, I actually have another question for Roddy. So you mentioned that retesting is better than concept mapping for, I think, science materials, but you didn't have time to explain it. I really was surprised at that.
It's not my project. Jeff Karpicki and Janelle Blunt have a paper in Science, and I can't remember all the details, but they wanted to use something to come back to her question that was very good, that we know is good, instead of just rereading. Although 80% of college students, if you ask them how they study, they say, I reread the material. They don't say they do these wonderful things we'd all like them to do. But they compared concept mapping, and I can't bring back all the details of what they did. And then after that, the people who were the developers of concept mapping wrote in an objection to their paper, and there was a back and forth in Science. So it's all out there, but I can't, sorry, it wasn't my work. But anyway, it's there, I'm sure. It's not a false memory.
check it. Okay, thank you very much.